Hey, what's up? My name's Dominic. I'm the Hymo engineer for 3 of the GTPs, and today I'm going to be taking on a lap guide for this weekend's Daytona 24 hours iRacing special event. Alright, so obviously exiting the oval part of the track leading back to start finish, you want to stay as low as possible because unlike what this track is usually being used for, which is heavy stock cars, you don't lack any grip at all at this point, so you're just basically going to take the shortest route back to start finish. This is where we're going to be starting. So this is going to be a lap in the Cadillac GTP car. Try to take sort of a middle approach over the start-finish line in order to set up your car for the braking into turn 1, which you want to start out, since it's a left-hander, you want to start it out as far to the right as possible. And in recent times, this corner has been a bit peculiar as well, since amongst other things, the new tire model and advancements in the setup and whatnot have allowed for a much wider entry line into T1, which I'm going to show you in full speed once. Yeah, so obviously there's a bit more to it than just taking a wide line, so there's a few tidbits here and there. So the main focus you want to be putting on when preparing your approach into T1 is this yellow light right here. So from the inside of the car, it looks somewhat like this. So you'll be aiming to basically go along the wall before you start turning into the corner, and you sort of coincide or so you sort of try to time that when passing the yellow light on the right there, this one. So this is your reference point, and shortly after which, about, yeah, let's see, about 3-4 meters or 5-6 meters after that is when I start hitting the brakes. And obviously you want to turn to the left at some point because it's going into the infield and not into the oval. So from the inside of the car, there's a set of cones here which you'll be aiming to make full use of because that is just free lap time at that point, or just free space to give yourself a wider angle into the corner. But you also don't want to overdo it because there's a change of grip level right around here. So here is where you start hitting a compression, and when going on to this light gray part, which is just ahead, this is where the grip will fade away. So you want to get most of your braking and turning in done on the darker gray part on the outside of T1. And also there's this, you'll notice the attitude of the car change right around here. So there's this slight incline, or there's this slight steep, or what's it called? There's this slight climb which gives the car some sort of compression just before the grip or just before the surface change. And right around this point is where the car will, yeah, right around here. Right around here is where the car will have this sort of hook momentum, and it will turn in quite a lot better, but just for a brief moment. So you need to be prepared for that. And yeah, also further on into the stint, you want to be more and more careful as to how you go back onto the throttle when going over this bump, going over this bump section, because with degrading rears, you will obviously find it a bit more difficult putting the power down. So this is obviously a lap on fresh tires, which is where you can be quite aggressive, but just be aware that you can use the outside of T1 pretty much throughout the whole stint in dry conditions. So but the further you go into the stint, you need to be more careful as to how aggressive you can be, how much speed you can carry. And when observing the sector times as well, you will notice that you will start out quite fast with, like, I think in the dry it's around the 13 flat 12 high 12-second mark, which you will do in the first sector. And but more often than not throughout the stint, you will not be able to go back down, or you will not be able to beat that sector time. So get used to it, more or less. Yeah, it even throws some tire marks. So this is on fresh tires, which then obviously means that further on you will eventually run out of tires. So this will at some point be to the detriment of your pace if you're not careful. So yeah. exiting T1, and also something very important to keep in mind, ever since there's been an update to the curb modeling, these outside curbs on the right and on the left, they're quite smooth to drive on up until right around here. So you will see I even clipped it. I didn't even clip it. I didn't even go to the inside of the curb with the inside part of my right hand side tires, but still I got quite a violent bump moment at that point. So if you happen to run out wide into the grass with one side of your car, be prepared for yeah, quite a wild ride, let's put it like that. So yeah, you don't want to go to the outside of these yellow curbs. Yeah, so as soon as you come out of this sort of little chicane, which is obviously flat out, you want to swing it back over to the left as soon as you can, and your brake reference will be the end of the white line, more or less. So try to aim the car to the left-hand side, and right just about after passing this last white stripe, that's where you stop. Well, where you will start to brake. Yeah, so as I said, you want to aim the car back over to the left as soon as you can. The earlier you can do that, the better, obviously, because ideally you want the car to be facing at least in a straight line as soon as you start braking. This right here, where I'm already braking, but I'm more or less facing away from the corner, is not 100% ideal. So if you can help it, try to go back to the left as soon as you can. Obviously to save distance out of the chicane, but also to have a more efficient braking, because if you still at this point I still have to turn the car a slight bit while braking, so that will take away from my brake potential a little bit. So if you can help it, try to go back to the left as soon as you can. And this corner also has quite an early turn in, so from the inside it will look a bit extreme at times how early you can turn in. Yeah, this is actually a pretty wide approach, I would say, but you're preparing. It's all about the exit at this point. So you're trying to get the car hooked on the inside of the corner. Maybe take some curb to help your rotation as well. But on this, don't get carried away by going onto the throttle or opening up the steering too early. Because if you do so, you will go to the. If you end up about a meter and a half further to the left, that will cost you a lot of lap time. First of all, because this curb right here will take away a lot of your forward momentum when going over it while under acceleration, and same story with this curb. So if you can help it, try not to go fully onto it with your left side wheels, because that will also have quite violent bumps, and if you stay just to the right of it, you will be fine in terms of forward momentum under acceleration. And also, like, the way the grip works in this corner is usually that most of the grip is on the very inside of the exit. So if you can help it, try to be a bit more patient on throttle. You can, of course, the way I've done here as well, if you look at my throttle trace, you will see that the moment I let off the brake, I'm slightly on the throttle again, which ever since they released the new tire model actually helps stabilize and actually gives a bit of rotation momentum into the car as well. So yeah, at this point I'm still not going full throttle until I know that I can more or less increase progressively and open up the steering according to my throttle input. So at this point, all I'm trying to do is have a really tight exit, as tight as I can. Yeah, going into turn 5, this is more or less flat out. This is maybe a bit of a tricky corner when facing traffic. So, as a GTP, if you're facing traffic in the Daytona 24, you try to make your intentions clear well before you enter the corner. So, this is where flashing your lights helps, for example. So, the way I do it usually, if I'm trying to tell the GT3 or LMP2 car ahead that I'm going for the move, I am committed, that's when I flash my lights. I don't usually flash my lights a lot unless it's sort of a 50-50 or unless it's not quite clear as to or where it's not quite obvious as to what's going to happen next. So if I'm within range to still be side by side at this point into this kink, that's when I will have flashed my lights about 50 to 100 meters before, or even while still in the previous corner when I'm behind the next GT3. So this corner by yourself, it's not very much of a challenge. But if you're facing traffic, then try to make your intentions clear before you go for the move. And obviously through the kink, because the next corner is a long right-hander coming up, so you want to stay as far to the left as possible. And right here is where I'll be using this access road to the left as my, well, not my braking marker per se, but like a good reference as to where I should be braking. And also, I'm just gonna let it run at full speed for once. So yeah, if when I'm approaching this corner, I try to be as straight as possible while after exiting the previous left-hand kink, which is obviously flat, and try to aim the car more or less where you want to be ending up before turn-in, so you don't have to put any steering inputs into the car while braking, because this corner has quite a bumpy braking zone. There's quite a big bump right around here. Yeah, you will see the attitude of the car change slightly. Oh yeah, there's the bump. Yeah, there's quite a big bump. So if you're not careful, or if you have too much, if you carry too much momentum with too much brake pressure over this bump, you will most likely end up having a lockup. So this bump right here, especially when carrying low downforce setups as you do in Daytona, there's not a lot of downforce that will save you once you have a lockup. So try to be mindful of that when braking into this corner. And as for the braking point itself, it is more or less about 2/3 away from the end of the access road at this point. So 1/3 of the length is behind me, and 2/3 of the length, or the width in this case, of the access road is still ahead of me. So about 2/3 of about a third of the way of the width of the access road is where my braking point is. So braking into here, try to keep as much brake pressure as you can on the brakes as long as you're going straight. And then once you start turning in, you start to take away some of the brake pressure and go into the trail braking and turning in phase. So this curb on the inside right here is quite harmless, I would say. You still feel the rumbling going over it, but it's actually pretty harmless in terms of unsettling the car and whatnot. So there's no danger in going over it, and also you sort of need it because you want to obviously be on throttle really early, but also try to aim for as tight an exit as possible, because this corner on the exit sort of has a pretty acute angle when exiting the corner. It's quite deceiving as to how tight the corner will get on exit still. So try to stay to the inside and try to stay more or less along this inside yellow curb until the end of it. So when the curb ends, that's usually your reference that you can start running out wide. But even then, the exit curb will be on you quite soon, quite a lot sooner than expected. So next corner is quite a tricky one. I'm gonna let it run at full speed for once. Yeah, this corner is all about the exit, and also it's quite a tricky one because following the corner there is more or less the second longest full throttle part of the whole track. So you do not want to have a snap-on exit more or less, or you do not want to be hindering your exit speed because it will more or less affect your lap time the whole way down the next straight, which is quite a lot. So it's about, let's say, 20 seconds of full throttle. So you don't want to be carrying 2 or 3 kph less than you could be. But it all starts more or less when approaching the corner. As for the braking point, for me, it's more or less the start of this, or as soon as this grass strip over here crosses into the track, that's where I'll be aiming to put the car with my right side. You can clip a little bit of grass here, and as you can see, right around here is where I start introducing the brake. And you want to be obviously you want to open up the corner as much as you can, where this strip of grass will since you don't apply full brake pressure yet over the grass strip, there is no real risk of locking up. But still be mindful that you're still taking a bit of grass when taking this line, so you cannot be too exuberant on the brakes, let's say. And right around here is where I'll have my maximum brake pressure. And also, same as the point before with this grass strip, you're aiming to put your right hand side over this curb right here. So yeah, but no further than that. Try to be as precise as you can when placing the right front of your car. It is right on the edge to the grass, so maybe 5 to 10 centimeters more to the right, and you're risking a lockup. So, and also risking grip loss since you're not on the asphalt anymore, so because you're on the grass. So, and right around the end of this curb, or of this orange curb, is where I'll start releasing the brake and turning the car into the corner. And also, you can take some liberties on the inside here because the transition from grass to curb, it is pretty smooth. So there, if you overdo it, obviously it can unsettle the car a bit, but usually more often than not, you should be fine when taking this. Was actually quite an aggressive approach, I would say, but as you can see, the car stayed well settled throughout the whole corner. And also, there's multiple approaches when once you pass the apex and exiting the corner. I like to go on throttle pretty early and run out wide until the very inside edge of this outside of this yellow curb or orange curb on the outside. I have seen people who go even wider than that, but yeah, I haven't really found my way around going even wider than that. And also, there's an approach where you stay quite far to the inside, which obviously means you have to be a bit more patient on throttle because you need the car to rotate a bit longer. So you wait about half a second to a second more when going on throttle, which will then enable you to end up further to the left, which will obviously save you distance. But if you watch the delta and take both approaches, you first try the early throttle, running out wide and then coming back down, or waiting on throttle, staying tight and saving distance. If you compare the two on the delta, you will notice that you will gain about maybe a tenth initially, but when you carry the speed or when it comes to then when the two lines converge again, that's when the outside approach will then obviously have about half a kph to kph more. So yeah, it's all about judging where you are at your stint or how the car feels, how the car is set up, and what is best for the car. But yeah, at this point, when taking the wide exit approach, obviously you want to be full throttle as soon as you can, and don't be shy to use the whole track. It maybe looks a bit ridiculous that you have to use the whole track because there's quite a lot of space available. But yeah, if you've done it right in terms of the wide exit approach, you will end up pretty close, and if you're not careful, in the wall. So be mindful that you will run out of space right around here sooner than you think. So try to be careful with that. And yeah, obviously NASCAR Turn 1 and 2 is quite obvious. You want to stay as far to the inside as possible. And yeah, it's all about setting up the bus stop chicane at this point. I'm just going to let it run at full speed. Yeah, at this point, you have a lot of time exiting NASCAR Turn 2 and setting up your approach into the bus stop chicane. And your markers or your reference markers are quite easy to see, I would say, even when you're behind traffic. So in the dry, you want to be braking simultaneously and turning in just before this one marker right here. I think I caught the perfect moment when I'm starting to introduce the brake. So yeah, up until at least halfway between the 2 sign and the 1 sign, you want to stay full throttle. And if you're fully committed on a quali lap and the conditions are right, you can even push it until the 1 marker. So you introduce about 50% of brake pressure and keep the brake on as consistently as possible. Because if you stab the brake, the weight transfer will happen a bit too suddenly, which will then upsettle the car. Which will then upsettle the car into what is the fastest corner on the track. So try to be as consistent and as smooth as you can on the brakes whilst being committed, obviously. and aim to be right on top of this right on top of this white part of the curb, because that will help you open up this next part. And also, when steering from left to right, you don't want to be too aggressive. Like, you can introduce some right or some momentum into the right, but also it's quite easy to overload the tires when you do. So try to be as smooth as you can when going from left to right. Some of you will know the term Scandinavian flick. Obviously, that's an option to flick the car into the right-hander, but also, as I've said, it's quite easy to overload the tires and just run out of grip in the middle part of bust up. So try to be as smooth as you can when introducing the right-hander. Try to use the whole track here, obviously. This is, I would say, pretty much on edge as to what you can do with in terms of off-tracks. But also, if you want to be on a fast lap, that's what's needed. So the first part, as I've said, try to be on top of this white part. Second part, you want to be not too early, but still on the white part at the end of the curb. Then into this third curb, you want to be aiming, yeah, to take this sort of triangle part of the grass, more or less. But as I've said, you're always running the risk of running into an off-track, so just figure out what is best for your driving style and for your car setup. But this is more or less, yeah, what ended up being ideal for the caddy, I would say. And yeah, this last part right here is usually where most of the incident points will get racked up. So I haven't quite figured it out myself, I have to say, as to which point exactly will give the incident point, but this was fine on my reference lap. So it's the better you do your homework in the previous part of bust up, the straighter and the smoother your exit will be. So try to judge as good as you can how much speed the car can take in the entry part, so as to not run out of space in the exit part. And the better you do that, the more speed you will carry onto this longest part of full throttle, which is into NASCAR Turn 3 and 4. And here it's quite obvious as well. As I've said before, just try to stay as slow as you can. And yeah, all you have to do then is carry a very tight line until the start-finish line. And even on the quali lap, maybe you can take some liberties with the apron as well. So yeah. So as one final tidbit before going into the Daytona 24, you obviously are going to spend a non-insignificant amount of time in the pit lane, which obviously becomes relevant when doing a strategy and whatnot. So when exiting the pits, you can more or less go do it without the limiter, but be careful that this turn to the left on the exit here it can potentially work full throttle, but only when you're on the limiter. And also with build up in marbles and whatnot, you will find that you will have less and less grip when going into this left-hander. So we will do one short lap, and I will show you the pit entry as well. So obviously this is going to be a demonstration which will happen on quite fresh tires, but also on a full tank of fuel. More often than not, when going into the pit lane, you will be on very light fuel load, but also pretty worn tires. So it should be right around the same. So the fuel that I carry on board, compared to what you would carry at normally, should negate the tire disadvantage at this point. But yeah, if you can help it, of course try to signal to the cars behind you that you're going into the pit lane. And you want to pull off right around here. And your braking point is this second kink in the white line. Yep, just about made it. And since iRacing doesn't really punish you for where you want to go in the pit lane, maybe if you can help it, try and stay to the right, unless you're near your pit box. Yeah. And there we go. That is one pit entry and one pit exit. So I hope I could help you pick up some tidbits and some useful tips perhaps before going into the 24-hour race this weekend. And I hope you had a lot of fun. And yeah, see you guys next time. Don't put this in.